I remember reading about 2016, when an unusually dry autumn pushed mountain lions closer than ever to the edges of Boulder, Colorado. The drought forced them to hunt near residential areas. It's a chilling reminder that even familiar places can hold hidden dangers. It was October 7th, 2016, and Wildwood Heights, an affluent neighborhood, was still dark and quiet. This upscale area had been built just 5 years earlier, right on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills. Winding streets were lined with modern homes that backed onto open space, corridors for wildlife. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator, started her daily 5 a.m. jog. She'd moved to Wildwood Heights for its blend of mountain living and city conveniences. A dedicated fitness enthusiast, she kept a strict schedule, often running 5 miles before work. Her morning routine was sacred, a peaceful time to clear her head and enjoy the crisp air and views. The autumn had been unusually dry, and local wildlife officials had warned about increased animal activity. Deer, elk, and their predators were venturing closer to human settlements in search of water. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings. Lisa had heard these warnings but dismissed them, confident that her neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wild cat species. Adult males can weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. They're perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters, targeting the neck and spine of their prey. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through a drainage culvert beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted, disappearing into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows. The attack came without warning as Lisa passed within 10 feet of the culvert. The mountain lion exploded from the shadows, covering the distance in a single leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt. Her attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck. His 4-inch canine teeth punctured through muscle and vertebrae. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, opening deep gashes. He used his strength to pull Lisa's body down into the concrete culvert. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and Wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The investigation revealed that she had inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there was August 19, 2017, when Felicity Grant arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado. This vast wilderness area is known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife. The mountainous region stretches across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails, attracting outdoor enthusiasts. But these areas also serve as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail closure. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. I've often reflected on the idea of apex predators, those creatures perfectly sculpted by evolution to dominate their environments. Mountain lions, for instance. Adult males can reach over 8 feet in length and weigh up to 180 pounds. Their hind legs are powerful enough to propel them 40 feet in a single leap, and their retractable claws, nearly 4 inches long, are designed to grip prey with deadly precision. Their 4-inch canine teeth, perfectly positioned to sever the spinal cord with a fatal bite. I've studied the case of Felicity, a woman who encountered the raw power of nature in a way she clearly never anticipated. She'd been warned, of course. A fellow hiker tried to caution her about solo hikes at dawn, but Felicity dismissed her concerns with a cruel arrogance. Felicity chose the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail, ignoring close signs she felt didn't apply to elite athletes like herself. She even tore down warning notices, claiming taxpayers like her had a right to use public trails. She began her run at 5:30 a.m., deliberately choosing the pre-dawn hours to avoid other hikers. Noise-canceling headphones blared electronic music, and she carried a backpack filled with raw steaks for a post-workout meal. The combination of her erratic movements, heavy breathing, and the scent of fresh meat created the perfect storm to attract a mountain lion. A 40-pound male mountain lion already hunting in the area detected the scent of fresh meat from over a mile away. He began tracking her through the forest. The cougar stalked Felicity along the ridge above the trail, using rocks and trees to remain hidden. As she rounded a sharp bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a large boulder about 15 feet above the path. When Felicity passed below, completely unaware due to her music and her arrogant belief in her invulnerability, the mountain lion launched its attack. The predator struck from behind with tremendous force. His hind claws raked down her back, while his front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. The mountain lion's canine teeth found their mark, clamping down on the back of Felicity's neck with surgical precision. The attack severed the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite penetrated deep into the neck muscles and fractured the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis. The cougar maintained his grip, his claws digging deeper. Within 2 minutes, Felicity was gone. The cause a combination of spinal cord severance, massive blood loss, and suffocation. The mountain lion then dragged her body off the trail to a secluded area to feed. Felicity's body was discovered 3 days later by a search and rescue team. The location and condition of the remains confirmed the mountain lion attack. It was December 3, 2014. Fluorescent lights hummed over the kennels at the county animal shelter. Jennifer Walsh, a 25-year-old veterinary student, walked between the cages with a determined look. She believed every animal deserved a second chance. As a weekend volunteer, Jennifer had a reputation for taking on the shelter's most difficult cases. She gravitated toward the aggressive ones, the animals marked with red cards indicating immediate euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including an attack on a neighbor's child that required emergency surgery. The behavioral assessment was clear: too dangerous for adoption. Scheduled for euthanization, Jennifer had been watching Diesel, looking for a sign of the gentle soul she believed was hidden beneath his aggressive exterior. She'd seen him pace restlessly, heard him growl at anyone who approached, watched him destroy every toy placed in his cage. But she'd also noticed what she interpreted as vulnerability, moments when he pressed against the back wall, briefly softening when he thought no one was watching. The shelter's protocol was clear: dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. Only staff with years of experience and proper equipment were allowed to interact with red card animals. But Jennifer had convinced herself that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that what he needed was one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. There are moments in my work as a historian that haunt me, times when a confluence of factors leads to tragedy, and the lessons learned come at a terrible cost. One such case is the story of Jennifer, a young woman with dreams of becoming a veterinarian whose life ended abruptly and violently. It serves as a stark reminder that good intentions and book knowledge can never replace experience and respect for established safety protocols. I remember reading the details of that day, how Jennifer approached Diesel, a 75-pound dog, in his kennel. She had a slip lead and the key to the isolation room, a small, windowless space used for behavioral evaluations. Diesel's reaction was immediate and threatening. His lips pulled back, revealing yellowed teeth. Hackles rose along his neck and a low growl rumbled from his chest. Every aspect of his body language screamed danger, but Jennifer interpreted these signs as fear rather than aggression. The moment the kennel door opened, Diesel's demeanor shifted from threatening to calculating. He seemed to assess Jennifer's position in the open doorway behind her. This brief hesitation gave Jennifer false confidence to slip the lead around his neck and guide him toward the isolation room. Once inside, Jennifer closed the door and removed Diesel's lead, believing freedom of movement would help him relax. The room was small, 8 by 10 feet, with concrete walls and no furniture except a metal folding chair. It was designed for safety, but also meant there was nowhere to run. For several minutes, Diesel stood rigid in the center, his eyes never leaving Jennifer's face. She sat in the chair and began talking to him, her voice gentle and encouraging, completely unaware she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came when Jennifer stood and took a step toward Diesel, her hand extended in what she intended as a peaceful gesture. To Diesel, the movement represented a threat requiring immediate action. His 75 pounds launched across the room with explosive force, his jaws targeting Jennifer's throat with precision. Jennifer's scream was cut short as Diesel's teeth sank deep into her neck, crushing her windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single bite. His jaws locked onto their target with mechanical efficiency. Jennifer's hands clawed desperately at the dog's head, but Diesel had been bred for combat, his grip unbreakable once engaged. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone while maintaining his hold. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles grew weaker, her body going into shock from the massive trauma. The attack was swift, brutal, and utterly without mercy. Other volunteers heard Jennifer's initial scream and rushed toward the isolation room, but the heavy door was locked from the inside. By the time they could locate the key and safely enter, Jennifer lay motionless on the concrete floor, her life ebbing away in the pool of blood. Diesel stood over her body, his muzzle stained red, his eyes still burning with the same aggressive intensity that had marked him for euthanization. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but Jennifer's injuries were beyond medical intervention. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her dream of becoming a veterinarian ended by the very type of animal she hoped to save. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized, his death as swift and clinical as the attack that preceded it. The investigation that followed was thorough but predictable. Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols, ignored clear warning signs, and placed herself in a situation that experienced professionals would have avoided. The shelter implemented new security measures, including electronic locks on isolation rooms and mandatory buddy systems for all volunteer activities. Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools across the country. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but requested that it go to students studying wildlife conservation rather than domestic animal care. A final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. It was April 17, 2018, and the humid Florida air hung heavy over the grounds of Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, a controversial facility that claims to rescue primates while actually exploiting them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries would never permit. The afternoon sun beat down on concrete enclosures where gorillas, chimpanzees, and other primates paced restlessly behind inadequate barriers. Jessica Rodriguez, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, had visited the facility with her husband Carlos as part of what she believed was a legitimate conservation effort. Jessica had always been passionate about animal welfare, taking photos of animals throughout her career to document their care and recovery. Her genuine love for animals had driven her to pursue veterinary technology training while working nights to support herself through school. Jessica had dedicated her career to animal welfare, earning her veterinary technology degree through years of hard work and sacrifice. Her passion for primate conservation had led her to volunteer at legitimate sanctuaries and support organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. Jessica genuinely believed that her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation efforts through the photo she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica was participating in what the facility marketed as an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla who had been acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's minimal safety measures consisted of a chain-link barrier that separated visitors from the gorilla's enclosure, with no additional protection or supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are among the most powerful primates on Earth. With adult males weighing up to 400 pounds and possessing the strength of 10 grown men, these magnificent animals are highly intelligent and emotionally complex. But they're also territorial and can become extremely aggressive when they perceive threats to their domain. The moment Jessica's hand passed through the barrier, everything changed. A 350-pound silverback grabbed her arm, and in that instant, a well-intentioned act became a tragedy. I can only imagine the shock and pain as King's grip tightened, a bone-crushing force against her. Gorillas are incredibly powerful animals. They communicate through complex body language and vocalizations, but they can shift from calm to violent behavior in seconds. Their massive hands can grip with crushing force, and their sharp canine teeth can inflict severe wounds. Jessica had approached the barrier with her camera, hoping to capture the gorilla's intelligence and emotional depth. King had appeared calm, sitting near the fence, observing the human visitors with apparent curiosity. She began photographing him, excited about the conservation message she could share. But she decided to reach through the fence, believing physical contact would create a more powerful image for her conservation advocacy. She interpreted the gorilla's calm demeanor as friendliness, not realizing it was the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. The moment Jessica's hand passed through, King reacted with devastating speed. He grabbed her arm with crushing strength and pulled her against the chain link. Her scream of shock and pain filled the facility as King's grip tightened. Other visitors tried to free her, but the gorilla's strength was far beyond human capability. King's massive hand maintained its grip on Jessica's arm, while his other hand reached through the barrier to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. Driven by territorial instincts, he continued the assault, inflicting devastating trauma to Jessica's head, neck, and arms. Her attempts to break free only seemed to increase King's aggression as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats. Her movements grew weaker as blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her body. King's grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier, his fury focused on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion. Within minutes, Jessica's struggle ceased. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form, displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached the enclosure. Emergency responders arrived with tranquilizer equipment, but it was too late. The investigation revealed that Sunshine Primate Sanctuary had been operating as an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting both animals and visitors for profit, while providing inadequate safety means and animal care. The facility was immediately shut down, and all primates were relocated to legitimate sanctuaries. King was transferred to an accredited facility with proper containment and enrichment programs. Jessica's death prompted enhanced regulations for facilities claiming to operate as animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of existing wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation supporting legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring that her genuine passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protected great apes. It was March 18, 2017, and the upscale Asheville, North Carolina neighborhood of Mountain View Estates was experiencing the first warm evening of spring. The residential development built on the slopes of the Blue Ridge Mountains featured large lots with mature trees and natural landscaping that blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds through the neighborhood's winding streets, caring for the pets of wealthy residents. Maria had been working as a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among Mountain View Estates' affluent homeowners who appreciated her reliability and genuine love of animals. She often walked multiple dogs simultaneously, managing up to 6 animals at once while maintaining perfect control and ensuring each pet received individual attention. Maria's income from dog walking helped supplement her day job at a local veterinary clinic, allowing her to support her teenage daughter as a single parent. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, with builders required to preserve mature trees and maintain natural wildlife corridors throughout the community. Recent construction of additional homes had disrupted established animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity in mountain communities, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during her 3 years of walking dogs in the neighborhood. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters from the local animal control office. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German shepherds and a golden retriever along the community's main street when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. Mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I've seen what bears can do when they're surprised or cornered. They can run up to 35 miles per hour, break down doors, and even overturn cars. And their claws and teeth? Devastating. I remember reading about Maria, who discovered a 300-pound black bear with 2 cubs near some garbage cans. The mother bear was feeding on discarded food while her cubs played nearby. Maria, recognizing the danger, began backing away slowly, But then the dogs she was walking started barking aggressively at the bears, triggering the mother bear's protective instincts. She rose to her full height, making aggressive vocalizations, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to retreat, but the dogs kept barking and lunging, escalating the situation. The bear charged, covering 30 yards in seconds. Maria, entangled in the leashes, fell onto the asphalt. The dogs scattered, leaving her vulnerable as the enraged bear approached. The bear's paws struck Maria's back and shoulders, driving her face into the pavement. Then her jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck. The bear's claws raked across Maria's torso and limbs, opening deep gashes. It was a brutal attack, driven by maternal instincts. Residents heard the commotion and called 911, trying to scare the bear away. Eventually, the mother bear retreated with her cubs. Paramedics arrived, but Maria had already died from massive head and neck trauma. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage had attracted the bears, creating the conditions for the fatal encounter. Wildlife officials relocated the bear family to a remote mountain area. Maria's death led to changes in waste management protocols, including bear-proof garbage containers and an early warning system for wildlife sightings. Then there's the story of Rebecca Martinez. It was October 15, 2016, and the Georgia sun was setting over her 10-acre property. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. It had become the soundtrack of her life. Rebecca had spent 8 years building her sanctuary, taking in dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch, the aggressive ones, the biters, the ones marked for euthanization. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company. Her neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property, moving between enclos with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends noticed the changes in her. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but she dismissed his concerns. The local veterinarian had even stopped making house calls after one of the dogs had lunged at him through a fence gap. The main enclos housed her 3 largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix with a history of severe abuse; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed. Rebecca didn't realize that these 3 had been forming an alliance, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them. The warning signs had been there. The 3 dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone and emotionally invested in seeing progress, I've spent years now studying how easily things can go wrong, how quickly the expected can turn into the unthinkable. And the story of Rebecca out in the American Midwest is one that still haunts me. She dedicated her life to rescuing dogs, dogs that others had given up on. But one evening, that dedication turned into a nightmare. Rebecca had a daily feeding routine, and as she went about it that evening, something felt off. The air, she said later, felt heavy. As she unlatched the gate to the main enclosure, her boots slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled, the buckets of kibble crashing to the earth. Rex, a 90-pound dog, was the first to react, but instead of going for the food, his eyes locked on Rebecca. In that moment, she wasn't his savior. She was competition. The attack was sudden and brutal. Rex slammed into her chest, knocking her down. His jaws clamped onto her shoulder. Titan and Scar joined in, their pack instincts taking over. Rebecca fought desperately, but it was no use. The feeding frenzy lasted nearly 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Rebecca lay motionless, her body broken and torn. Her body wasn't discovered for 3 days. Animal control found the dog still in the enclosure, seemingly calm. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous. Rebecca's death led to new regulations for animal rescues, but for those who knew her, it was too late. Then there's the story of Camille Morel. It was April 3, 2017, at the Thor Zoo Safari Park in France. The wolf sector, usually still and quiet, held a hidden danger. Camille, a fitness instructor, was spending the weekend there, seeking tranquility. She'd stayed before, enjoying the animal sounds instead of traffic. She booked a chalet and planned to keep up her running routine. The park's trails were well marked and considered safe. Camille had read the safety pamphlet and felt confident. Her chalet overlooked the wolf sector, separated by natural barriers and double fences. She trusted the system. That morning, Camille set out for a quick 2-mile jog, just like at home. The zoo's landscape was a mix of natural calm and controlled wilderness. At dawn, the service road and inner track looked almost identical, a known issue in drive-through parks. The wolves' territory covered nearly 20 acres. A scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened a service gate near the chalet, but overnight frost had iced the latch. One of the workers, distracted by a mechanical issue, left without confirming the gate was secure. The interlock meant to re-engage failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside and jogged down the gravel path, seeing no posted warnings. I find myself often reflecting on how easily the line between safety and tragedy can blur, especially when dealing with the raw power of nature. Consider the case of Camille, a jogger who unknowingly crossed into a wolf enclosure. She likely thought she was on a safe, familiar route, never suspecting the danger that lurked just beyond the trees. She'd been jogging on what she thought was a trail looping back toward the perimeter. By 7:20 a.m., she was nearly half a mile in, the road dipping slightly with pine trunks and open brush on either side. Unbeknownst to her, she had crossed into the wolf enclosure. The wolves, fed the evening before, were restless after a cold night. 3 of them, the dominant male and 2 others, were near the northern edge, stirred by the scent of human movement. From the observation tower, a zookeeper spotted the lone jogger and radioed for confirmation that the route was clear. Seconds later, the horrifying realization dawned. She was inside the enclosure. He shouted into the radio for a patrol, but before anyone could answer, the calm was shattered. The wolves emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. Camille slowed, confused, thinking the barrier must be nearby. But when they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc, she froze. She turned, saw the empty stretch of gravel behind her, and started jogging back, faster now. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper watched as Camille glanced back once at the wolves. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel and she fell forward, hitting hard. Before she could get up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward with a violent jerk. Another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream echoed across the enclosure. The zookeeper sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. The response vehicle was rerouted, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes. Within what would normally be considered a reasonable response time, 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. The rangers arrived within 10 minutes, finding the wolves clustered over Camille's body. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. 2 rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. One ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations and crushing trauma to the limbs. Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thori Zoo Safari, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family, and the park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclos audit were conducted. Thori Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. Then, there was July 22, 2016. The scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclos that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cats sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacations and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of 3 sisters. developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 litres and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 lbs per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a swipe. I've seen nature turn in an instant. I've read the reports, the after-action analyses, but nothing quite prepares you for the sheer speed of it. Millions of years of programming can activate in a heartbeat. Ashley, a young woman on a break from university, found herself at an exotic animal sanctuary. She was excited, captivated by the stories the owner spun about each rescued creature. Caesar, a 400-pound African lion, was the star, seemingly docile, having been hand-raised. As the tour ended, Ashley saw an opportunity. She wanted the ultimate photo, a selfie with Caesar. She convinced her friend Jake to distract the owner while she slipped over the enclosure barrier. I can almost see her there. The lion was resting about 10 feet away, his golden eyes watching her but showing no outward aggression. She crouched down, phone in hand, ready to capture the moment, but as she moved closer, Caesar's demeanor shifted subtly. His ears flattened, his tail twitched faster. Then, with explosive suddenness, he attacked. It was pure instinct. Ashley's phone flew from her hand as the lion's paws struck her chest, driving her backward. His claws tore into her torso and shoulders. His jaws clamped down on her neck, teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. Caesar's territorial instincts took over completely. He continued his brutal assault, claws raking, bite crushing. Ashley's movements weakened as blood loss and spinal trauma overwhelmed her. Jake's screams brought the owner running, but it was too late. Caesar's aggressive posture over his kill made intervention too dangerous. Within minutes, Ashley was gone. The investigation revealed the facility lacked proper permits and insurance. Caesar was relocated. Ashley's death prompted her university to enhance safety education for traveling students and led to stricter regulations for exotic animal facilities. Then there was Giovanni Russo, 38, in Gran Paradiso National Park, northern Italy, on May 21, 2018. He'd worked those slopes for over a decade. A certified alpine guide, he and his wife, Elena, led trekking tours. Giovanni was considered practical and even-keeled, a man who knew when to turn back. He saw himself as part of the balance between humans and wildlife. He often told clients that predators avoided people. That weekend, he led a routine trek with a couple from Milan. One of them left a pack of trail mix open near the fire pit, and scraps from dinner were tossed nearby. Wolves had returned to the region after decades of absence. Usually nocturnal, they hunted red deer and chamois. But recently, rangers had observed younger wolves venturing closer to human camps, especially when food waste was accessible. Just before dawn, around 4 a.m., Elena woke to soft rustling, then a faint, uncertain growl. She saw silhouettes clustered around the fire pit where the unsealed food bag now lay torn open. She whispered for Giovanni. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside alone, walking toward the food zone. The beam caught 3 wolves standing over scattered wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised, paws firm on the ground. He shouted again, clapping his hands as he closed the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm. Giovanni jerked back, but a younger wolf followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward, blood pulsing from his injuries. The wolves held their ground, circling the dropped food bag. Elena tore from the tent with a burning stick from the fire pit. I've spent years poring over accounts of human encounters with wild animals, and some stories, despite their tragic outcomes, offer chilling insights into the raw power of nature. Take the case of Genevieve Lawson in the Sundarbans National Park. She was a 42-year-old real estate agent from London, determined to get the perfect photograph, no matter the risk. What unfolded that day serves as a stark reminder of the respect we owe to the wild. It was July 15, 2016, when the Lawson family arrived at the remote Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India. Before them stretched the vast mangrove delta, a maze of tidal channels and dense vegetation where the Ganges River meets the Bay of Bengal. Ancient mangrove trees rose from the brackish water, their aerial roots creating an impenetrable network. This UNESCO World Heritage Site harbored one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems, where saltwater crocodiles lurked beneath the surface and venomous snakes coiled in the canopy above. Genevieve, known for her demanding personality and unwillingness to accept limitations, had booked the most expensive boat tour package available. She'd already berated their local guide, Ravi, multiple times during the morning briefing. Her husband, David, a 45-year-old investment banker, tried unsuccessfully to moderate her increasingly aggressive behavior. Their teenage children, Emma and Jake, watched uncomfortably as their mother dismissed every safety warning as unnecessary fear-mongering designed to limit their premium experience. Ravi, despite his 15 years of guiding experience in those treacherous waters, found himself intimidated by Genevieve's constant threats of negative reviews and demands for closer wildlife encounters. The motorboat had been equipped with safety barriers specifically to keep tourists safe from the apex predators that ruled this ancient domain. But Genevieve viewed these precautions as obstacles preventing her from capturing the authentic jungle photographs she so desperately wanted. The Sundarbans mangroves serve as the exclusive hunting ground for the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators that have adapted uniquely to this aquatic environment. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers and have developed an unusual willingness to hunt humans in water. Weighing up to 400 lb and measuring over 10 feet in length, these magnificent cats possess four canine teeth capable of crushing windpipes and delivering fatal wounds within seconds. Their distinctive orange coat with black stripes provides perfect camouflage among the dappled shadows of the mangrove forest, making them virtually invisible as they move silently through the water. During the afternoon tour, their boat approached a narrow channel where Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks along the muddy shoreline. He immediately cut the engine and whispered for complete silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through the area. Despite his urgent warnings about remaining in the boat, Genevieve became frustrated with the distance and declared she needed closer photographs. Against all protests from her family and guide, Genevieve stepped over the safety barrier and lowered herself into the chest-deep channel water. The murky tidal water concealed her movements as she waded toward the mangrove shoreline, camera held high above her head. Unknown to the group, a massive 400 lb male Bengal tiger had been resting in the dense vegetation upstream and had detected their boat's engine minutes earlier. Sundarban's tigers are ambush predators that use water as their primary hunting medium, approaching prey with complete silence while swimming. This particular male had successfully killed humans before and recognized the splashing sounds of vulnerable prey entering his territory. The tiger slipped into the water upstream and began swimming toward Genevieve, with only its eyes and nose visible above the surface. When Genevieve reached the muddy shoreline and began photographing tiger tracks, she remained completely unaware of the approaching predator. The tiger closed the final 20 ft underwater, using its powerful limbs to propel itself through the murky channel with deadly precision. The attack erupted from the water with explosive violence. The massive tiger surfaced directly behind Genevieve and immediately clamped its powerful jaws around her throat from behind. The foreign canine teeth punctured through her neck muscles and crushed her windpipe with over 1,000 lb of bite force. The tiger's signature killing technique involved suffocating prey by crushing the throat, and the massive prez collapsed her airway instantly. Genevieve's body went rigid as the tiger's teeth severed major blood vessels in her neck, causing massive internal bleeding. The predator's powerful forelimbs wrapped around her torso, while its hind legs found purchase on her lower body, holding her in an inescapable grip. The tiger then began its drowning technique, pulling her backward into deeper water while maintaining its cruel hold. The tiger held Genevieve underwater for several minutes after she lost consciousness. The combination of a crushed windpipe, severed arteries, and forced submersion had proven fatal within minutes. Then it disappeared into the mangrove maze. It was November 15, 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia. Snow fell, muting the usual sounds. Nikolai Baranov's radio had been silent since morning. The last check-in was brief and routine, giving no hint that his route would end in silence and blood. Nikolai was 52 and had spent most of his life in these forests. As a forestry worker, he managed patrols in the buffer zones near the Cody Allen Mountains, monitoring traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity. He lived alone in a small settlement near Dahlner, his routine built around the forest's rhythms. That week, he had been assigned to survey a hunting reserve, following reports of wolves pushing closer to villages. He rode out before dawn on his snowmobile, a canvas bag packed with bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. Colleagues said he often preferred working solo, claiming a second engine just scared off wildlife. That day's assignment was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had been increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. Wolves here could travel up to 20 meters in a single night, driven by hunger across frozen ground and sparse woodland. Their diets shifted with the season: deer in autumn, carrion, or smaller mammals. In the hard months of winter, when deep cold set in and prey vanished beneath ice or snow, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. A human scent, faint and unfamiliar, might still trigger the same ancient reflex to follow, test, and close the distance. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the same warnings at the station that morning, but didn't take them seriously. He had checked his flare gun but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather had shifted fast, gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor made several radio attempts that went unanswered, assuming battery failure from the cold. When evening came and Nikolai still hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route before dark. Evgeny rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight mounted on his snowmobile and a sidearm holstered under his coat. Tracks were faint, but visible. A single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. There, the engine was half buried in snow, its headlight still faintly glowing. Prints showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice from the track. Around the site, another pattern emerged: paw marks deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines, evidence of pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded through what Yevgeny later described as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. Closer inspection revealed a snapped branch at chest height and a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back, while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Ivani followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. The forest was unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed that the surrounding prints showed at least 4 individuals: 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Ivani radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle from the nearest post to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalner for examination. Autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. Then, the scene shifts. It was June 14, 2015. And the Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida, was settling into another warm summer evening. The gated community, built around a series of interconnected retention ponds and decorative canals, had been marketed as a tropical paradise for retirees seeking the Florida lifestyle. Walter Walt Kowalski, a 67-year-old retired plumber from Ohio, was enjoying his 5th year in the Sunshine State from the comfort of his backyard patio, which overlooked one of the community's scenic waterways. Walt had moved. Alligators have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. It's a chilling thought, really, to consider a creature so perfectly adapted as an ambush hunter, lurking in the waters for millennia. I've often wondered what it must be like to possess such ancient, primal instincts. Walt, a retired plumber from Ohio, had moved to Florida, seeking the promise of year-round golf and fishing. He bought a modest ranch home with water access, a private dock where he could fish and feed the ducks. His routine involved sitting on his patio with a cold beer, watching the sunset reflect off the water while tossing breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. The Sunset Lakes community where Walt lived was built on reclaimed wetlands. Developers had created retention ponds and canals to manage stormwater, which also served as attractive water features. These waterways were connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay, allowing wildlife to move freely between developed and undeveloped areas. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, bringing increased wildlife activity to residential areas. Walt had noticed more alligators in the community's waters, but he, like most Florida residents, had learned to coexist with the reptiles. His regular duck feeding, however, had created a reliable food source, attracting waterfowl from throughout the area. American alligators, those apex predators, are perfectly adapted for their role as ambush hunters. Adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 lbs, with jaw muscles capable of exerting over 3,000 bodies of press per square inch. They're opportunistic feeders, consuming any animal they can overpower, including birds, fish, mammals, and occasionally humans who venture too close. One evening, Walt was relaxing on his patio when he noticed that his favorite fishing lure had become tangled in the vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water, using a long-handled net to free the snagged lure. He had done this many times before without incident, confident that the shallow water near his property was safe. But the attack came from directly beneath Walt as he stood in the canal, focused on retrieving his lure. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, exploded upward with devastating force. The reptile's jaws clamped down on Walt's right leg with bone-crushing power, instantly fracturing his femur and severing major arteries. The alligator initiated his signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining his grip. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal, where the alligator's natural advantages became overwhelming. The 12-foot alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center of the canal, where its superior swimming ability and underwater endurance made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movement ceased as drowning and massive blood loss overwhelmed him. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of the call, but the alligator had already retreated to the deeper water with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through the night to locate and capture the reptile, using specialized equipment to safely extract both the alligator and Walt's remains from the canal. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the large alligator to his property, creating a dangerous situation that culminated in the fatal attack. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the Sunset Lakes community's water safety protocols, including the installation of warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. It was September 8, 2014. The vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun, their sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teeming with some of America's most dangerous wildlife. The remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with airboat tours carrying tourists deep into alligator territory, where massive reptiles basked on mud banks and hunted in the dark water channels. Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was experiencing his first visit to Florida as part of a cross-country road trip. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending his weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest mountains. His engineering background had given him confidence in analyzing risks and solving problems. But his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited to black bears and mountain lions, which could be avoided through proper precautions. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips with his father and uncle. His methodical approach to problem-solving had made him successful in his career, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence in his ability to assess and manage dangerous situations. He enjoyed taking photos of his travels to share with his family and friends back home. That afternoon, Michael had joined a small group airboat tour that promised close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, had repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep their hands inside the boat at all times. I'll never forget reading about the power of an alligator's bite. Over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. It's almost incomprehensible. These ambush hunters, perfectly adapted to their aquatic environments, can reach lengths of 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. They explode from the water with terrifying speed, seeing any movement near their territory as either food or a threat. The story I read described an airboat tour that had been progressing smoothly. The guide spotted a massive alligator sunning itself on a mud bank, maybe 20 feet away. This reptile was easily 12 feet long and weighed over 800 pounds, a prehistoric form, perfectly still in the afternoon heat. A man named Michael started photographing it, excited to show his colleagues back in Seattle such an impressive animal. But his enthusiasm overcame his caution. He leaned farther over the boat's edge to get a better shot, and his phone slipped from his grip, falling toward the dark water. Without thinking, he lunged forward, trying to catch the expensive device before it disappeared into the swamp. That's when it happened. The alligator, which had been patiently monitoring the boat, reacted instantly. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mud bank with terrifying speed, its powerful tail propelling it through the water like a missile aimed directly at Michael. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. That 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers desperately grabbed at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat, but the alligator maintained its grip. It began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while holding on to Michael's arm. Michael's struggles grew weaker as blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed him. The alligator never loosened its grip, continuing the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing more trauma and ensuring its prey couldn't escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased. The alligator's brutal assault had been fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the following day, when wildlife officials located the alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. That same year, on July 8, 2017, in the sweltering Detroit summer, Maria Santos was loading her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral dog population by night. Recently laid off, she was spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance, but tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers, but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim streetlight like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to. I've always been struck by the brutal efficiency of nature, especially when it turns against us. Sometimes our empathy blinds us to the inherent wildness that persists, even in creatures we think we understand. I've read accounts of animals turning on their caretakers, and they always leave me cold. There was the story of Maria, for example. She lived in an abandoned neighborhood, and out of kindness, she started feeding a pack of 6 stray dogs that roamed the area. They would circle her, their movements coordinated. But one day, when 2 of the smaller dogs began fighting over food, Maria stepped in to break it up. That was her fatal mistake. Her movement triggered Alpha's pack instincts. Suddenly, she wasn't the provider, she was competition. The 80-pound dog launched himself at her, jaws clamping down on her left arm. The other dogs joined in, their pack mentality overwhelming any memory of Maria's kindness. They dragged her deeper into the lot. It was a coordinated attack that spoke to generations of predatory instincts, refined by years of urban survival. These weren't pets gone bad. They were wild animals who had learned to see humans as threats or prey. Maria's screams went unanswered. It took 3 days to capture the dogs. They were euthanized, their wild nature making rehabilitation impossible. Then there's the case of Kendra Sullivan, a wildlife photographer who arrived at the Namba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda on September 8, 2015. The sanctuary was a refuge for orphaned and rescued chimpanzees. Kendra, known for her fearless approach, had been commissioned to document the rehabilitation work. She believed her experience with domestic animals gave her an innate understanding of animal behavior. Despite warnings from the sanctuary's director and caretakers about the unpredictable nature of these powerful animals, Kendra dismissed their concerns. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized by poaching. Despite rehabilitation, these animals retained their wild instincts, making them dangerous without proper barriers. Chimpanzees are incredibly powerful, with grip strength exceeding 2,300 pounds per square inch and canine teeth over 2 inches long. During a tour, Kendra grew frustrated with the viewing restrictions. She wanted access to maintenance areas, but Dr. Mikasa explained they were strictly off-limits. While the group was observing chimpanzees, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor. Ignoring explicit warnings, she slipped away, believing her experience had prepared her for anything. The maintenance area brought Kendra within direct reach of Bozo, the sanctuary's dominant male. Bozo, who had shown aggressive tendencies toward unfamiliar humans, became agitated by Kendra's intrusion. When she raised her camera, Bozo interpreted it as a challenge and grabbed Kendra's extended arm with crushing force. I've seen firsthand how chimpanzees instinctively target the most vulnerable areas during attacks: faces, hands, genitals. It's a brutal efficiency designed to inflict maximum damage. I remember reading about a specific incident. The details still haunt me. A woman named Kendra was attacked by a chimpanzee named Bozo. The chimp, with canine teeth over 2 inches long and razor sharp, initially fractured her forearm with a force of 1,300 pounds per square inch. He pulled her against the barrier, and that's when the real horror began. Bozo tore into Kendra's face and neck. His hands ripped at her clothing. His feet kicked at her torso. For nearly 2 minutes, this relentless assault continued. His jaws crushed her facial bones, tearing away skin and muscle. Major blood vessels in her neck were severed, causing massive bleeding. Her attempts to defend herself were futile against the chimpanzee's overwhelming strength. Her free hand was severely mutilated, several fingers crushed by his powerful jaws. Another man, Peter, heard Kendra's screams and used high-press water hoses to drive Bozo away. But it was too late. Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries. She died from hypovolemic shock and facial trauma before emergency services could reach her. The investigation that followed focused on the security failures that allowed visitor access to restricted areas. Then there's the story of David Lasky and his cousin, Jeff. It was February 9, 2014, near Lang, Saskatchewan. The morning light filtered through the boreal forest as they set out on what they thought was a routine trip. David, a part-time wildlife photographer, and Jeff often went together to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. They knew the woods well. They'd grown up hunting and fishing there. That weekend, after a light snowfall, David wanted to check a set of cameras near Wasco Lake. They'd heard distant howls before, but never close. David believed wolves avoided humans by instinct. They planned a simple 2-hour snowmobile ride, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. The wolves in that region were typically gray, thick-coated animals, averaging about 90 pounds, moving in family groups. They relied on coordination and patience rather than speed, and usually avoided people. The men dressed in insulated gear, carrying only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile and began walking the last half mile through packed snow. At first, everything seemed normal. They reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed a creek, Jeff slipped on a patch of ice. David crouched to help him, steadying his cousin by the arm. That's when they noticed movement among the trees. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching the light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off, but the wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half buried in snow behind the tree line, a cached carcass the wolves had dragged there the night before. The pack was food-stressed, defending their cache rather than hunting. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. David tried to rease Jeff, saying they were just curious that noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then came the first lunge. A gray blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact drove him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. Two more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast, their paws sending up bursts of white powder. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held their ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I've always found it unsettling how quickly a wilderness encounter can turn tragic. A moment of awe can become a fight for survival in the blink of an eye. It's a stark reminder of the power and indifference of nature. Jeff swung the burning flare, its hiss cutting through the night, forcing the wolves back. They retreated into the trees, their low growls fading as they disappeared. He pressed on his cousin David's wound, but it was too deep. Within a minute, David's movement stopped altogether. Jeff pulled David's camera bag close and with shaking hands used his phone to call for help. The reception was faint, cutting in and out, but somehow a signal reached a nearby ranger station. Authorities arrived by snowmobile about 40 minutes later. They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. Wolf tracks surrounded the site in a broad ring, with drag marks leading back toward the tree line and the cached deer carcass. The official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. Provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents, closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from the bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting. But that distinction mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. Then, just a few years later, on December 9, 2018, The hillside community of Canyon Vista in suburban Los Angeles was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development, built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains, featured homes perched on steep slopes with spectacular views of the city below. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice. He decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot rather than follow the longer route along the main road. Kevin was an honor student and star athlete, balancing academic excellence with athletic achievement, earning recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista such a desirable address. He often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years in the neighborhood. The Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires that had burned thousands of acres in the surrounding mountains. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the neighborhood's informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly through the undeveloped areas, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and, occasionally, humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80-pound juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80-pound mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, his bite force targeting the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding in the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. I've always been drawn to the points where the wild brushes up against our constructed world. Sometimes the results are tragic. I recall a case from November 3, 2015. It began with such promise, a sprawling exotic ranch in East Texas where wealthy clients paid handsomely for photo sessions with dangerous predators. This particular ranch, Loner Exotic Ranch, operated on 300 acres, a kind of shadow to legitimate wildlife conservation. They offered interactions that accredited zoos would never consider. On that day, Brandon Walsh, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, arrived. He'd heard about the ranch through his clients and saw it as the ultimate test of his courage. He was passionate about fitness, always pushing his limits, and had saved for months to afford this experience. He'd built his business on helping others overcome their fears, and perhaps this success had bred a bit of overconfidence. Brandon paid the fee for a private session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger raised by hand from a cub. The ranch owner, an experienced former circus trainer, supervised but emphasized the extreme dangers involved. Bengal tigers, magnificent but solitary, are among the world's most powerful predators. Their bite force can exceed 1,000 lbs per square inch, and their claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The session started with Brandon outside Sasha's enclosure, posing with the safety barrier in place. But he quickly grew frustrated with the distance. He wanted more dramatic photos. He convinced the owner to let him into a smaller holding area, separated from Sasha only by a chain-link barrier. It was against all established safety protocols, but the owner relented, thinking Brandon's confidence would keep the tiger calm. Brandon began posing, his camera on a tripod. Then he made a fatal mistake. He crouched down and extended his hand toward Sasha, believing he could show dominance over the apex predator. The tiger's ears flattened, her tail twitched, and her hunting instincts took over. Sasha launched herself at the barrier with explosive force. Her paws struck the chain-link fence, and her claws found purchase on Brandon's arm. Her strength pulled him against the barrier as her jaws snapped at him through the fencing. The tiger's claws tore across his arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes that bled profusely. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, distracting Sasha and forcing her to release her grip, but it was too late. The damage was catastrophic, severing major arteries. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes. His physical conditioning was useless against such devastating injuries. There's something deeply unsettling about the way animals can turn when pushed to their limits. I've read accounts of the most loyal creatures becoming dangerous in the face of desperation, and it always leaves me with a chill. It makes you realize how thin the line between domesticity and survival can be. I recently came across a case that brought this home in a particularly gruesome way. It was the summer of 2013, and the Missouri heat was bearing down on Tommy Rodriguez's property. He ran an illegal puppy mill, and the stench of neglect hung heavy in the air. Tommy's operation was fueled by greed, but it was also his undoing. He cut corners, especially when it came to feeding his guard dogs. These weren't ordinary pets. They were massive, aggressive animals trained for security. But as Tommy's finances dwindled, so did their food supply. And hungry guard dogs, I've learned, are exponentially more dangerous. The dogs had been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks, fighting over food and ignoring Tommy's commands. But Tommy, distracted by his financial woes, failed to see the warning signs. He approached the area where he kept the guard dogs without taking proper precautions. He hadn't fed them in 3 days. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Brutus, a 125-pound cane corso, was the first to emerge, followed by the others, Titan, Rex, and Scar. Tommy never stood a chance. The attack was brutal and prolonged. The dogs, driven by hunger and instinct, tore into him. His screams echoed across the countryside, but no one was close enough to hear. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes. By the time it was over, there was nothing left to save. There was another incident I recall, a horrifying reminder of the dangers of blurring the lines between wildlife and entertainment. A man named Brandon, a fitness enthusiast, wanted photos with a tiger named Sasha for social media. The ranch where Sasha lived was operating illegally without proper permits or safety measures. During the photo shoot, Sasha attacked Brandon. He died from massive trauma and blood loss. The facility was shut down. It always strikes me how easily things can go wrong when dealing with powerful animals. There's a story that haunts me, one of the darkest I've encountered in my years of research. It's about a man named Tommy who ran an illegal puppy mill. He thought he could control everything, even the hunger of the animals he exploited. But in the end, those very animals turned on him, their desperation becoming his downfall. Tommy's body wasn't discovered for 3 weeks. The guard dogs, initially meant to protect his operation, had consumed his remains. The other dogs, trapped and starving, died in their kennels. The stench of death eventually led authorities to a scene of unimaginable horror. The investigation revealed the full extent of Tommy's cruelty, with breeding females kept in terrible conditions and puppies dying from disease. The surviving dogs, deemed too aggressive and unhealthy, were euthanized. His death marked the end of a large puppy mill, but the cost extended far beyond his own life. A dark end for someone who thought he could control nature. Now, let me tell you about Roberto Mendez. It was August 22, 2014, a sweltering summer afternoon in Cypress Point, Florida, a luxurious community built on reclaimed wetlands. Roberto, a 35-year-old landscaper, was meticulously maintaining the grounds that made Cypress Point so desirable. He'd built his company from the ground up and took immense pride in his work. He was providing for his wife and 2 young children. The development was constructed on former Everglades wetlands with decorative ponds connected to natural waterways. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife and respected their presence. On that particular afternoon, he was trimming bushes around a pond when his hedge trimmer slipped into the water. He waded in to retrieve it, assuming the manicured water was safe. American alligators are ambush predators, perfectly camouflaged. Adult females can reach 10 feet in length and weigh up to 200 pounds, possessing incredible speed and power. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll is designed to disorient and drown prey. The moment Roberto's feet touched the muddy bottom, a 10-foot female alligator exploded into action, her jaws clamping down on his right leg. The bite fractured his tibia and fibula, severing arteries and muscle tissue. She immediately initiated her signature death roll, spinning him violently in the water. Roberto's desperate attempts to break free only triggered the alligator's instincts to bite harder and roll more aggressively. His screams echoed across the manicured lawns as the alligator continued her relentless death roll. The spinning dislocated his knee and hip, causing massive internal bleeding and tissue damage. The pond's clear water turned red as Roberto's struggles grew weaker. A homeowner heard his cries and rushed to investigate. I've spent years studying apex predators, but some stories still haunt me. The arrogance of humanity, its perceived dominance over nature, can sometimes lead to unspeakable tragedy. I'm thinking now about a woman named Tara Whitfield. She was a marine biology graduate student who, on March 22, 2017, arrived at the Neptune Islands off the coast of South Australia, one of the world's most famous great white shark diving destinations. She was about to learn a lesson in humility that would cost her everything. The Neptune Islands are remote, rocky outcrops jutting from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by crystal-clear waters that plunge to depths of over 200 feet. These waters are nutrient-rich, a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawing these massive predators to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara, who was 38, came from Los Angeles. She had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package available and immediately began making unreasonable demands. She was known for her entitled attitude, believing that money could buy her anything. She berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as Tara screamed at the crew, complaining about what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience operating in those dangerous waters, had dealt with difficult clients before. But Tara's aggressive behavior and complete lack of empathy alarmed him. She repeatedly demanded that the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she had paid premium prices and deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Lisa Chen attempted to explain the life-threatening dangers, Tara dismissed her as an incompetent employee, clearly jealous of successful people. Tara was convinced that her graduate student status and expensive booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide her with the extreme experience she demanded. Her complete disregard for safety became evident when she suggested that crew members should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The waters around Neptune Islands hosted some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators that had ruled these seas for over 400 million years. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds, with massive triangular heads housing rows of razor-sharp, serrated teeth. Each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length, designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had successfully attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among the responding predators was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, who was feeding aggressively on the bait. This enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunction that would justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged in the protective cage, Tara immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface, but instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming immediately and abandoned the chum bait to investigate this new potential prey. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing press. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch shattered Tara's ribcage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels throughout her torso. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying press, while its head thrashed violently from side to side, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've often thought about the arrogance of believing we can control nature, especially when large predators are involved. There was a case some years ago of a woman who thought her money could override a shark's instincts. She ended up paying with her life. The investigation revealed that Tara, as she was named, had deliberately sabotaged equipment and violated safety protocols during a shark cage diving operation. She died within seconds from massive blood loss, traumatic shock, and the destruction of vital organs, as massive amounts of blood clouded the water. The feeding behavior continued for a few more seconds, as the shark consumed portions of her body before disappearing into the depths. Maritime authorities implemented stricter regulations for shark cage diving operations. Tara's family, displaying that same sense of entitlement, even filed lawsuits against the tour company. Then there's the story of Harold Thompson. It was March 22, 2015, and the Alabama sun beat down on his property, where barking echoed from kennels scattered across 5 acres of red dirt. At 71, Hank, as he was known, moved slowly between the enclos, carrying water with the confidence that came from 20 years of dog breeding. He and his wife, Martha, had built their operation from nothing, specializing in Rottweilers and German Shepherds. What had started as a hobby had grown into a modest business, with 8 breeding females and 3 males producing litters they sold across the Southeast. But age, it seems, had made Hank careless about safety protocols. In his younger days, he never would have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during territorial phases. He'd seen what these dogs could do, the power in their jaws, the speed of their attacks, but experience had bred overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler whose massive frame made him their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, with a bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers seeking protection animals. Recently, though, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable, causing him to snap at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The veterinarian had prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had grown increasingly unpredictable. Martha had expressed concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, especially given the dog's recent mood changes, but Hank dismissed her worries with stubborn confidence. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning, water bowls required filling, work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, the dog's dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have served as a warning. The animal was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog. Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single, catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident, caused by his failure to recognize warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. It was September 3, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still, open, and silent. From a distance, it looked calm, a place where nothing could happen quickly. But the quiet there was deceptive. Sarah Miller, 26, was an experienced backpacker from Anchorage. She was known for her. I've always been drawn to stories of survival, especially those that test the boundaries between respect for nature and the unpredictable power of the wild. The case of Sarah Frazee in Denali National Park is one that continues to haunt me. A seasoned hiker, she ventured into the Alaskan backcountry, her route timed to coincide with the caribou migration, a path where wolves were often seen trailing. She wasn't reckless. She carried bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights. Solo travel was familiar to her, something she'd done for years, even documenting her treks for hiking blogs. She had the required permits for the Denali backcountry zones. Rangers remembered she had asked about late-season wolf movements, but she didn't seem worried when told sightings had increased near the river corridor. Wolves, they explained, were following caribou herds migrating south, and fresh tracks had been spotted just days before. To Sarah, it seemed, this was simply part of the environment, something to respect, not fear. These wolves typically ranged from 70 to 100 pounds, built for endurance and speed, capable of covering 40 miles in a day. Their bite force was nearly 400 pounds per square inch, enough to crush bone. Normally, they rarely approach people, living primarily on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. However, when prey became scarce, or human scent carried traces of food, curiosity could sometimes lead to danger. That week, rangers had posted advisories near trailheads, noting that several hikers had reported wolves trailing them at a distance. Sarah likely saw those postings when she signed out, though there was no indication she changed her route. Her confidence in her precautions was understandable. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided confrontation. Around 4 p.m., a tourist group spotted a lone figure standing on a gravel bar below the ridge. The hiker waved, later confirmed to be Sarah, before continuing upstream toward her camp. She reached her final GPS coordinate sometime before 4:45 p.m. The last photos on her recovered camera showed wide shots of the river valley and a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the distance. Tracks found later suggested she moved off the main gravel bar toward higher ground, likely intending to cut inland. The first sign of a struggle began about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS unit recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators pieced together what happened next through physical evidence and predator behavior analysis. The wolves had diverted toward her position once the herd passed out of sight. Sarah likely saw them at a distance and deployed her bear spray once. Residue was detected on nearby vegetation. Wind readings that afternoon showed a westward shift, causing partial blowback of the spray mist. It worked briefly, driving the wolves back about 20 feet before the cloud dispersed. They began to circle again, perhaps emboldened by the fading chemical scent. One flank of the group approached from behind, following her retreat up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed deep into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. One wolf had likely lunged first, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through, consistent with a pulling force rather than a cut. A second wolf joined, aiming lower, its bite breaking the skin along her thigh. She tried to fight back. The spray canister lay spent beside her pack, but the group coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground at the site was churned with soil and hair, suggesting several minutes of movement before she was forced down. Analysis of tissue marks later revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder consistent with a killing grip, the kind wolves use to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, and the torn sleeve, recovered 20 feet away, still held fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night with ground crews and a helicopter dispatched after rangers noticed her vehicle unmoved. The aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel the next morning. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing, likely carried off by scavengers after the attack. They collected the camera and other items for analysis and later confirmed through timestamps that her final photograph was taken just 6 minutes before the estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed multiple backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolat pack. Investigators determined the attack began as a predatory test or prey proxy response that escalated fatally, but with no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior observed, no removals were ordered. At a private debrief, rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who later issued a short statement urging that the park not punish what it protects. It was April 14, 2018, when Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida, one of the largest tropical wilderness areas in the United States. The vast wetland ecosystem stretched across 1.5 million acres of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways that served as home to some of North America's most dangerous predators. The park's intricate network of channels created the perfect habitat for massive American alligators. Monica Barrett, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. Known for her aggressive courtroom tactics and confrontational personality, she had built her legal career on intimidating opponents and refusing to back down from any challenge. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. The story of Monica still haunts me. I've seen the park ranger's report, read the guide's testimony. It's a stark reminder that nature, in its rawest form, doesn't negotiate. She reportedly dismissed safety protocols, believing her legal background somehow trumped the instincts of a seasoned swamp guide. She even brushed aside a park ranger's warnings about alligator nesting season, calling it government overreach. Her visit, tragically, coincided with the peak of alligator breeding season, a time when male alligators become fiercely territorial. Park officials routinely restrict access to waterways during this period, posting warning signs, but these precautions didn't deter Monica. American alligators are truly apex predators. Adult males can reach up to 14 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Their bite force is one of the most powerful in the animal kingdom, exceeding 3,000 pounds per square inch. Those massive jaws hold 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth, perfectly designed for gripping and crushing prey. They can remain motionless for hours, then explode into action with incredible speed. Tommy, the guide, repeatedly warned everyone to stay within the designated channels, especially with the active alligator nesting season. But Monica grew increasingly belligerent, even threatening legal action, accusing him of limiting her constitutional rights. Despite his efforts to keep the group together, she broke away, paddling her kayak toward a clearly marked restricted lagoon. She was determined to explore, convinced she had every right as a tax-paying citizen. That restricted lagoon was a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator, a creature that had been aggressively defending its territory for 3 weeks. The 800-pound reptile had already driven off several smaller males. The presence of Monica's kayak immediately triggered its most aggressive instincts. The alligator detected the vibrations of her paddle strokes almost instantly. It had been resting motionless beneath the surface, perfectly camouflaged. Its attack was swift and devastating. The 800-pound predator launched itself from the water, its massive jaws clamping down on the front of her kayak. The impact capsized her instantly, throwing her into the murky water directly in front of the enraged reptile. As Monica struggled, disoriented and panicked, the alligator identified her as a threat. Its jaws found purchase on her torso, razor-sharp teeth puncturing her life jacket and tearing into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite shattered ribs, punctured lungs, and severed major blood vessels. Then came the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The alligator rotated rapidly, spinning her body while maintaining its grip. The violent rotation tore muscles and caused catastrophic internal injuries. It continued for over a minute. The violent motion filled her punctured lungs with water, while the crushing press prevented her from breathing. Her shattered ribs ground against each other, causing further internal bleeding. The combination of trauma, drowning, and blood loss proved fatal within minutes. Her struggles ceased as the alligator continued its death roll. The reptile eventually released her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy radioed for help, but rescue teams couldn't reach the remote lagoon in time. Then there was Sarah Johnson. It was May 14, 2017. The ancient mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park rose majestically above the Tennessee landscape, their peaks shrouded in the characteristic mist. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking. Golden sunlight filtered through the canopy of oak, maple, and hickory trees, and wildflowers carpeted the forest floor. Sarah, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé, Tom. They were exploring the park's extensive trail system and taking photos to commemorate their engagement. Sarah had always loved nature photography. Her medical background gave her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. She had been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills through countless weekend adventures with Tom. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department, and these mountain getaways provided essential stress relief from her demanding career, saving lives in one of Atlanta's busiest trauma centers. That afternoon, they were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they discovered something extraordinary. 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass, their mother nowhere to be seen. Sarah immediately recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, but I've learned that a mother bear with cubs becomes exponentially more aggressive and territorial than a solitary bear. They will attack without warning to defend their young, viewing any human presence as a mortal threat. I've read accounts of their incredible strength and speed, capable of running up to 30 mph through dense forest. In one tragic case, a woman named Sarah and her fiancé, Tom, were hiking in an area known for its bear population. This was meant to be an opportunity that would create incredible memories of their engagement trip. Sarah began photographing some adorable cubs from what she believed was a safe distance, but her excitement at capturing such rare footage led her to gradually move closer for better shots. Tom repeatedly urged her to maintain distance and leave the area, but Sarah was convinced that the mother bear was not nearby. The cubs continued their playful behavior, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass while Sarah documented their every move. Her photography session continued for nearly 10 minutes as she captured dozens of images. Sarah's fatal mistake, as I understand it, was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved to get a better angle for her shots, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200-pound female covered the distance to Sarah's position in seconds, her powerful legs propelling her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah attempted to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward while still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah's position before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back, her razor-sharp claws raking across Sarah's spine and shoulders while the impact shattered several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help were silenced by the crushing press on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, her crushing bite force fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased as the mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.